All right, welcome back to the Chatter's Box, and today is my privilege to have the Hall of Famer, Whitey Herzog, with us. And the reason I'm so excited about Whitey, I've had the privilege of being around Whitey for so many years and heard so many of your stories and great conversations, and I'm excited to bring that to the fans. And our hope is you're going to get a taste of what it's like sitting with Whitey in the locker room or at lunch and just talking ball. And so, Whitey, I am so glad that you have stepped into the Chatter's Box and been a part of this. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing good, Kyle. We got home, of course, last Monday. I was really kind of wore out. We had some long days. But you know the thing that I believe that the legends down there like, I mingle with them breakfast. I mingle with them at noon. I mingle with them in the evening. And they all like to sit around me because I use a lot of bullshit. But anyway, it's been a good time, and I think they enjoy it. And as long as I'm healthy enough and as long as Joe wants me to come down there, I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
But I can't travel by myself anymore. I'm getting up there pretty good, and if it wasn't for Dan Weinster taking care of me with a wheelchair to get to the baggies, I really couldn't make it by myself.
Yeah. Well, Whitey's talking about the Cardinals fantasy camp that we just got back from a week ago, and they are long days. They're 14-hour days, and that's one of the things I just am amazed by you. 14-hour days you're putting in down there.
Yeah.
And you just power through in the way that you embrace the campers. So we have just to give listeners an idea, there's 144 campers. So these are people that pay to come down for the experience of St. Louis Cardinals fantasy camp. Then there was 41 alumni.
Yeah.
That also includes Hall of Famers like you, Ozzie, Ted Simmons were there. Lou Brock used to come all the time. Gibson used to come. Bruce Sutter, it was one of his favorite weeks of the year. And we honored Bruce this year as a part of Legends Camp. But it is a lot of fun. And your job at Fantasy Camp is...
Well, I got the toughest job.
It's a hard
there.
job.
It was amazing this year. It seems like that every year I've been down there, and, the best pitcher is not hard to find. The best hitter is not the best overall player. But every year, about 30 guys don't hit a ball out of the batting cage. So I got 30 names to kind of watch for 3-4 days to see who's going to be the worst player in camp. And it's been pretty easy. But this year, out of all the guys you're talking about, 120-some legends, there was only one person that swung and missed all 5 swings. Everybody else hit the ball. Yeah. I was amazed, But there was more good arms down there this year. There was more good players. We were 8 years younger than we were in previous years, and the quality of baseball was much better. I can never understand why the wives and the kids come out and watch that, because it's tough to watch some of those.
When you say it's better, it's still really bad baseball.
It's still bad.
It's really bad.
The one thing about the Legends Camp, like you and me go down there along with 42 other legends and so forth, we really see how hard it is to play baseball.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you see some of these guys, because I think there's half of the people that come to the Legends Camp that the wives want to get rid of them, and so they give them the money to come to the Legends Camp at Christmas. So they get rid of them a week so they can spend a week by themselves.
Yeah. Well, and we have to put up with them. We have to deal with them, unfortunately. They pass them on to us.
And I get a kick out of, I imagine you do too, the nights that we sign autographs.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 2 signings, All of a sudden it's 2 baseballs and the yearbook, and the next time there's something else. Then they got something. Once they start adding one thing and they see it ahead, they run and get it. They're all trying to get 4 things, And I don't mind that because they pay well and so forth, and I'm not going anywhere. And I'm sitting on my can, so what the hell difference it make? But the big thing is, those legends, it's amazing how many, Kyle, were fans in the 80s.
Yeah.
And now their kids are coming with them. They're in their 60s. And now some of the grandkids are coming. They're in their 40s. Now today, my daughter Debbie's birthday, and she's 68 years old. My youngest grandson now is 22 years old. And my oldest great-grandson is 13 years old. But I got, out of the 9 grandkids I got, 8 of them are boys. Of the 10 great-grandkids I got, 7 are boys. So we got a lot of Herzogs running around St. Louis.
Well, Whitey is 91 years old, and Whitey, anytime I get around you, whether it's fantasy camp, seeing at the ballpark, I just love just sitting down and soaking it in and hearing the stories. I grew up here in St. Louis, a huge Cardinals fan, and so I grew up. I was born in '84, so I grew up, watching the late '80s, really becoming a Cardinal fan into the '90s. But I want to talk about your time, obviously here in St. Louis. So what I've learned, and just paying attention to the way that your former players talk about you and the stories and the things they want to talk about. What's really stood out to me, and I want you to talk about, when you came to St. Louis in 1980, everybody talks about how you constructed a team that was built specifically for Busch Stadium. Can you talk about that a little bit and what went into that?
Yes, when I came here in June of 1980, I'd been fired to Kansas City after 79 season. We set a attendance record that I finished 3 games out after winning 3 divisions 3 years in a row. I didn't get along with the owner, and we got into a big argument because when I first got there in July of 75, they were worried about drawing 1 million people. And I said to Mr. Burke, who hired me, he was my general manager of Texas after I got fired there in 63, I think it was. But anyway, I got to St. Louis not knowing anything about the National League. I spent all my time. I was a very mediocre ball player. I was what you'd call a hanger-on for 8 years, a fringe player. I often got a kick out of Mr. Rollie, who I want to congratulate about the Hall of Fame, because he got upset because Tony didn't tell him he wasn't in the lineup. Well, I didn't worry about that when I played. I worried about coming to the ballpark to make sure I had a locker. And I told him that one time. That's the only time I've ever seen him laugh. But I'm so happy for him.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got to St. Louis, and I was down at Buddy Blattner speaking at a dinner, golf dinner, and Mr. Sussman called, and to my son in Kansas City at the time, he was the only one at home, and Jim gave him the number, my cell phone number. I don't think there was cell phones then, but anyway, I came to St. Louis after the dinner. I left down there about 12 o'clock. I got in at 3 o'clock. We checked in under an assumed name in St. Charles. And my wife said she felt like a prostitute checking in at a motel at 3 o'clock in the morning. Then they picked me up at 7. We went out to Grant's Farm. And so I met Gussie. I had met Gussie before, but he didn't remember that. And Sussman was there, and his third wife, Margaret, was there. And we talked, and at the time, they were in last place. They had 3 of the top 10 salaries in baseball, in Hernandez and Templeton, and Simmons. They were all making $671,000 a year, and we were in last place. So we had 3 of the top 10 salaries. So anyway, I talked to Busch, and we were talking. And Sportsman was the instigator. He was the guy that Gussie didn't know who the hell it was. But in the meantime, it was a little tough because Sportsman says all our life we've never hired a manager for over 1 year. And I said, well, that's fine. I said, we'll just skip it because I'm never going to accept a 1-year contract again because I just went through this in Kansas City. And I said, if some player don't like you and the player likes him, the manager's the guy that's going to get the axe. And I said, we set 4 attendance records. But what made Kaufman mad at me, I said to Joe Burke the day I signed my contract, if we draw $2 million, will you give me a $50,000 bonus? And he said, yeah. I should have asked for more. But anyway, that made Coughlin mad. And every time he'd have a few drinks and I'd stop in the press room with Galen Cisco or my coaches or something, he'd throw it up to me. You don't deserve that money. I said, well, what are you worried about? When I come here, you couldn't draw $1 million. Now we're drawing $2 million. Well, he had that crawl, and he'd throw it up every time, and I would talk back to him, and I knew the first time I didn't win, I was gone. Mm-hmm. I knew that from day one. And he had Pat McGeehan before me. And to be honest about it, he used to go out to Marion Lab and have lunch with Mr. Kaufman or an ice cream cone and so forth. And I wasn't a lunch guy. I'd go fishing in the morning. I'd come home, swim a few laps, jump in the shower, take a nap, get up at 1, be at the ballpark 2:30. So the lineup would be posted at 3 o'clock. And so anyway, I was going out the door. And I had refused the job. I just said, I'm not going to work. And Gussie, I got to the door. And Gussie said, come back here. And he said, you know what? You're right. The players are signing 5-year contracts, and you deserve more than one. And he said, I'll sign you to a 3-year contract. And he said, you'll never get in the last year of your contract. And he was true to his word. And it was ironic. I was here. We opened up. My first game I managed was in Atlanta. And we won that game, and Simmons got 4 hits that night. And I could see right then and there we didn't have much of a bullpen. You know, it was pretty bad. And then from there, we went to Chicago on a Thursday afternoon. And we're last in our division, and the Cubs are 5th, and the place is packed. And I said to Shandy, I said, what's going on here? He said, this is the Cardinals and Cubs rivalry. But most of those guys would come up like if there was a 4-game series, all the lights weren't up yet. And they'd come out that first game Thursday, and then they'd get gambling and play poker, and they'd never see the ballpark again. But they came up for 4 days, you know. And we come home, and I don't remember who we opened up with at home. But anyway, I was out in center field, and one of the ushers came out. I was talking to one of the ball players. And he said, the chief wants to see you up in his office. So I said, okay. So I went up to the office, and he's there. He had his red jacket on, his 10-gallon hat. And he said, what have I got? Just like that. And I said, Gussie, I said, I want to be honest, I can be with you. You got a bunch of overpaid players, and you're never going to win here in this ballpark, the way the ballpark is constituted. I said, we got no speed. We got a good hitting club. We got some good young players. But I said, every year since you moved in here in 1966 in Busch 2, we've finished 11th, except 1 year with Richie, the guy we got from Philadelphia, the third baseman. We finished 11th. Otherwise, we're 12th every year in home runs. And he said, well, Gussie said, what do you want to do about it? I said, I want to tear it apart, and I want to build a ball club with speed. Because speed's the only thing you can use offensively and defensively, and especially in this ballpark, we can neutralize the speed. And if we play like I want to play and start getting some switch hitters in the lineup and so forth, I said, I think we can put a good ball club on the field. You know what he said? Do it. So I went to the winter meetings, and the winter meetings were in Dallas. And I had the deal made with San Diego for Fingers and Short, and they wanted Kennedy. Well, I had signed Porter as a free agent. Now, that was quite a situation. I didn't want to lose Teddy because if we'd had the DH, Teddy would have been my cleanup hitter, my second string catcher, and died a Cardinal. Believe me, because he could hit.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I went to the winter meetings. I had that deal made and I was down I was Dallas or Atlanta, but I don't forget. It was one or the other. But anyway, Fingers was there getting his Rollie Award. And all of a sudden, I talked to Kennedy, and he had to get rid of Suter because his agents asked for too much money. And so I made the deal for Suter. So now I got Fingers and Suter. And I had Fingers in the Kansas City organization as a young pitcher. And he was a long-time reliever and damn good one. About 14 years he pitched relief as a short man and good. So anyway, I said, Rollie, I got to ask you a question. Bases are loaded, ninth inning, winning run on second, left-hand hitter. If I take you out to bring in Suter with his split finger, would you be mad? Oh, yeah, he said, that's my man. I said, well, I got to be honest with you. I'm not getting into that, so I'm going to trade you. So I had a deal with Gussie when I signed, and of course August the 4th, that if I signed a high-salary player, I had to get rid of a high-salary player. I had to stay within $500 a year of the budget, up over or under, but that's where I was at. Well, now I got Finger and I got Suter. And I called Suter after we made the deal, talked to Browner and Gahuli, who were his agents, and we set up a date. And he's coming to St. Louis on Tuesday, and I told Sussman, I said, when Suter comes here, I am negotiating the contract. I want you to keep your mouth shut, just like that, to Lou Sussman. Because he was not a very pleasant guy. He's... Bing Devine probably said the best thing. He's the kind of guy that can fire you at 10 o'clock in the morning and send your wives a bouquet of flowers at noon, saying how sorry he is. But he was trying to fire somebody all the time. Mm-hmm. The front office was in turmoil, believe me. He wanted to get rid of McShane. He wanted to get rid of the Toomey. It was just no end to it. And to this day, I've kept all the letters he sent me with Gussie's signature that I knew he wrote because Gussie didn't use them big words that he was using. So anyway, it was kind of a funny deal. And so I said that I just said, Rollie, I've known you a long time. Longevity-wise, you've probably been as good as anybody, pitching as well as you have for so many years at Oakland and so forth. But I said, I just don't want to get into that because I am going to bring in Suter, certain guys, because of the split finger. They know it's coming. They can't hit it. He's the most dominant relief pitcher I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of good relief pitchers, Gossage, the big guy at Boston that could throw and so forth, Norleski, Mossy, guys like that. So anyway, we made that deal. Then we made two deals, and I said to Lee Thomas, who was Kissel in the minor league department, and I wanted Lee to be into baseball instead of the traveling secretary. And I said, you know what? Ted come to me, and he don't want to play first base or left field, and I can understand that, and he wants to be traded. And I said, well, I'm going to try to oblige him. But I said, I think the minor league clubs was a DH. And if they got a catcher, they want him as a second-string catcher. And so, boy, it'd be a perfect guy. And there wasn't much interest in Teddy. He only had two clubs, Oakland and Milwaukee. And after we made the deal with the Cubs and we gave him Durham, a good young prospect, I wanted to get a young player, and I never seen him play, but all of our scouts were raving about David Green. Best player in the minors, Nicaragua guy, playing golf. Couldn't go home in the wintertime to his family because he put him in the Army. He was a Sandinista. And anyway, it took Milwaukee 7 days when I offered him Vukovich, Fingers, and Simmons. Now, that's a hell of a deal. That's a catcher, a short man, and the guy got the Cy Young, Vukovich. And I said to Harry Dalton, who was my farm director when I was with the Baltimore Orioles as a player and a good friend. I worked for him with Bobby Winkles when I got fired in Texas, coached a year. And I said, Harry, you want to win a pennant? Here's the 3 guys. If you'll give me David Green in the deal, I'll make the deal. 7 days later, they still didn't want to give up David Green. And then finally, they had a big argument at Scarborough, Ray Scarborough, their top Scott, Dalton, and Waller Shannon, all these people. They agreed to make the deal. Well, when I came to spring training and we had David Green, and the first time we played the Mets in spring training, because we were at Miller-Huggins Field and they were at Al Lang, or vice versa, I was with the Mets. Seeing David Green and Strawberry, 2 specimens, 2 guys with bodies and ability that both should have been great Hall of Famers. And all of a sudden, I find out that David's having problems. He's a lot older than his baseball age. He was having some personal problems with drugs. A lot of that wasn't his fault. But here's a 21-year-old kid that couldn't go home. Mm-hmm. And he had to stay in Mexico over winter. And I'm not making excuses for him. But David never worked out like he should have because of problems. And all of a sudden, I guess, Strawberry has really straightened his life out. He's talking to kids now. He's doing a good job. I got really a good relationship. He lives out in St. Charles. But these are the things that got screwed up a little bit. So anyway, we make that deal. So now we've traded 14 ball players to get 11.
All in one offseason.
Huh?
All in one offseason.
Yeah, just
you imagine doing that in today's?
Days. I mean, the writers love me. I had 3 major trades, and I'm announcing the trade every hour. You know, they ain't been that busy in their life. You know? So anyway, everybody said I was crazy because I got rid of too much, but we couldn't run, and we would get 10 to 12 hits. Good hitting lineup. You know, we had Hernandez, we had Simmons, and was not coming. We had Templeton, who had 100 hits from both sides of the plate, but we couldn't score. We'd get 12 hits and 2 runs every night. We couldn't get 12 hits and 12 runs. We couldn't manufacture nothing. Nobody tried to hit the ball, advanced runners, and so forth. So anyway, that was 1981. And then we had a day here in St. Louis, Ladies' Day. And I made the statement during the winter, the only untouchable was Templeton, because that's how much ability he had. And it's something that I didn't want to trade Gary Templeton, but he strikes out on a 3-2 pitch. Really bad. And the fans booed him. Stands out in front of the stands and gives a number 1 to the fans and so forth. And I grabbed him and threw him in the dugout. But in the meantime, we went to San Diego the next day to open a West Coast trip. And Gussie calls. I'm at where they're playing the golf tournament this week. La Costa on an off day. We played Tuesday night. And he wanted me to release Templeton. I said, Gussie, please let me handle this. I said, you lost Carlton over $4,000. He's on the way to the ballpark to sign the contract. And because you wouldn't give him that $4,000, he went to Philly for Rick Wise. And Rick Wise was a good pitcher, but he was no Carlton, you know. So I said, I'll make a deal with you. I will not have him on the club next year. But I will definitely release him before the season starts. And I was wearing both hats. I had become the general manager and the manager. But I said, I promise you he won't be on the team next year. Well, I was going to try to trade him. Because I'm not going to. I said, Gussie, I'll release him if I can. The four shortstops that I asked for was DeJesus, Burleson, the guy at Detroit, DeJesus at Chicago and Philadelphia. He was traded. Burleson was at Boston. Oh, and Ozzie. I got a no on all of them. Zip. I said, oh, boy. So what I did, I knew that Davy Johnson didn't like Oquendo. And Ozzie was having some rotor cuff problems, and I was worried about him being able to throw from shortstop. So I signed Oquendo because I knew, and I found out that he had a shortstop by the name of Sanchez played for him in winter ball, and he loved him. I called Bill Verdon, who managed him, and he said, yeah, so I made the trade. We were going to draft a relief pitcher from Jeff City. But we changed it, and they owed us a player in the supplementary draft the way it was. And we got Sanchez, and I got Oquendo for Sanchez, who turned out to be like, if I have to relieve Templeton and I can't make a deal, he's going to be my shortstop. He was a pure infielder. Didn't hit but about 190, but he made himself a pretty good on-base guy, too. So anyway, that was the end of the winter meetings. That's the way the season started. And the trouble started and so forth. And, you know, when I look back at 1981, we had the best record in the division. We got screwed in they split it. We won the overall division by 3.5 games. Cincinnati won the Western Division by 6.5 games, and neither one of us got in the playoffs because we finished a half a game behind Philadelphia in the first half because we played one less game. And then we finished half a game behind Montreal in the second half, so we didn't get in. Cincinnati, with Johnny McNamara and the acquisition of Seaver, beat the Dodgers by 6.5 games. Tommy Lasorda won the World Series with no wild card and won the World Series, didn't win nothing. Mm-hmm. But yet Gibson hit the home run because he had the best Orozco out in the bullpen, best left-handed reliever in baseball, and didn't use him. And he hit a 3-run home run when he was crippled. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was 81. So the next year we go to spring training, 82. That's when we got Ozzie. And that was something of, I was at the managers' meeting in Atlanta. And every year the managers that are under contract have a luncheon at the winter meetings. And McKeon and Dick Williams, who was a very good friend of mine, teammate in Baltimore and Kansas City as player, they said, are you still interested in an Ozzie Smith for Templeton deal? And I damn near fell off the chair. I couldn't believe it. I said, by all means. And the next thing you know, Mrs. Kroc is mad, and she told her son-in-law, who was the CEO, Krocs are the McDonald people, that they get rid of Ozzie. Because during the strike, the 58-year-old strike, they strike in 81. Ozzie was their gardener. They paid him $200 a week to make ends meet. He was only making the rookie salary at the time, which was about $30,000. Woo, boy. So anyway, I made the deal. Shook hands, made the deal. Then I find out McKeon says, one thing I got to tell you, Ozzie has a no-trade contract. I said, what do you mean? There's nobody on a one-year contract's got a no-trade contract. He said, well, he's got one. And I said, well, Jack, I said, let's do it anyway. Let's see what we can do. So anyway, on the best plane ride I ever took in my life, on December 26th, after the winter meetings, I flew to San Diego. I met with Ozzie and his agent, Ed Gottlieb. They picked me up in a limo. I found out the limo was one of the helpers that worked at Gottlieb's place, and he didn't know where the hell the lights were out or nothing when he took me to the airport. But anyway, we went to Gottlieb's house. I met with Ozzie and his wife and Gottlieb and his wife, and had a few pops. I took them out to dinner. I caught the red eye back to St. Louis. But before I left, I said to Ozzie, here's what I'll do. He don't know I'm going to have to release Templeton. So whatever I get out of him, I'm gravy. If I get a year, that's gravy. I got a year to find me a shortstop. So this is something that's really funny. I go out there. I get on the red eye, and I said, Ozzie, here's what I'm going to do. If you come to St. Louis and play for me, I will give you $400,000 next year. At the end of the year, if you don't like me, you don't like St. Louis, and you want, I will give you your release if you so desire. But if you like me and you like St. Louis and you want to stay in St. Louis, I will sign you to a long-term contract. That's the way he left it. He said, is it okay if I let you know a week or two after New Year's? I said, yeah. On January 7th, I'm in my office, general manager, trying to deal with the agents, trying to sign everybody and so forth. Phone rings. Miss Gottlieb. Ozzie and, I forget his first wife's name, but anyway, are coming to St. Louis. That particular day, the phone rang. The chill index was 17 below zero. I said, Jesus, there's no way they're going to, Denise was her name, that they're going to come to St. Louis when every time you play the anthem in San Diego, it's 72 for crying out loud. Well, I go out there, Ben, and it's just amazing how this all fell in place. I said, I go out to the receptionist out in the lobby of Busch 2 and meet him. They got full-length fur coats on. They got coonskin hats with the tails hanging down, what I call the Daniel Boone hats. And I said, there's no way. So I brought him in my office. I spent about 2 or 3 hours with him, and then I called Bob Forsch. And I said, Bobby, I need a favor. And I told him the story. I said, Ozzie and Denise are here. Would you pick them up, you and Molly? Take them to dinner tonight, but take them out to Chesterfield, show them the nice homes that everybody's living. Put them on the red eye. Keep track of every nickel you spend and bring it to me. I'll reimburse you tomorrow morning. Okay, he did it. They left. I don't know whether Ozzie's coming to St. Louis or not. A week later, Gottlieb calls, and he says, Ozzie's coming to St. Louis. And that's history, because he's the guy that put the glue. Mm-hmm. And if there was 2 things we did, getting Suter and getting Ozzie were the things that really put it all together. But it was amazing how the players, the fact that I had Lonnie Smith in left field, Willie came up in when Green got hurt and hit 340 or something as a rookie. Henrik had 21 home runs. He was our leader homer. And then Herb played second grade. Ozzie, my God, I knew he was good, but I didn't realize he was that good. He really was better than I thought he was. I moved Ovi from second over to third, and he played Gold Glove third base. And the only reason I ever traded Obie was because I wanted Daly, and Horner got hurt, and they wanted Obie for third base. And I had Pendleton, and I moved him to third base at AAA 50 games before. So when I did something like that, I could have Pendleton at third, who turned out to be a hell of a player. A most valuable player at Atlanta. So now we're set. And no one picked us to win anything. Everybody thought I was nuts doing what I did and so forth. And we ended up winning 2 less games than we went the year before when we got back in the race and won the race in 81, but we only played 100 and some games, 110, something like that. We won. And Ozzie, I think Suter had 53 saves. It was all-time Major League record at the time. Bill Campbell I picked up for nothing from Minnesota. He had the screwball, and they put left-hand hitters up against him, and that goddamn screwball, he just ate them up. He really was a hell of a middleman. And we had Depp, Cal Coons Jr., and so forth, but everything we never lost 3 games in a row. And Forshee pitched well, but the bullpen was lights out. Daly, I didn't get till 84, and I got him. But 85, Daly and Horton did a super job. We both won 9 games, both saved about 11. They were, both of them, no matter how I'd use them, short, long, I'd tell them for the game which one I was going to use and stuff. And to go with Suter, Bruce was amazing. If we had a Sunday game, and it was in the Cardinal magazine, I talked about it after Bruce passed away about a month ago, and he'd come to me. And we were off on Monday, not playing until Tuesday night. He'd say, Skip, if you need me in the 7th, I'll close it for you. And he'd do that. I didn't use him. But one thing I did, Kyle, and being both a starter and a reliever, if you get your closer up, you're going to use him.
Yeah.
And if you don't use him, that inning you got him warming up, he goes in the next inning. You don't ever warm him up without using him, period. That's what made the left-hander so mad at Tony when he passed up and then the right-hander hit a free run. But anyway, that was the best trip I ever made. I guess you'd have to say Ozzie and I are still very tight. I go to everything I can do for him because he's just been a great guy, and what a great person he is. But he put the glue to the ballpark. When people saw how good he was, and Tommy Herr, in the 9 years he played in all 3 pennant winners here, 82, 85, 87, never booted a ball in a clutch. And the only time that Ozzie ever made an error in the 8.5 years he played for me is in Candlestick. When he come across on the Candlestick, the second, and the ball hit that wind, you know how it used to blow there, and that ball went up in the stands. That's the only time in 9 years of managing them 2 guys that they ever booted a ball that cost the ball game. Mm-hmm. That's how good they were. But we could manufacture runs. And every year, I'll take 82. Milwaukee had a good team. Outstanding. I don't know if we were in the same division if we could have beat Milwaukee. We could have beat Kansas City, and we could have beat Minnesota if we played them in the division. But I'm not sure that they didn't have a better team, and I'm not too sure if they'd have had Fingers that we'd have won the World Series. But in the meantime, we finished with 66 home runs to their 228. They beat us 11-0 the first game. They just run us to death, and they had some good players. Cooper, Molitor, Gantner, Bando, Ogilvy, the guy in center field that Bruce struck out. And, it was, and Cooper was a hell of a ball player at first. And they had some good pitchers, but they didn't have Fingers. He was hurt. And I still say if they'd have had him, they walked the guy on 3-2 with bases loaded. It might have been a National League ball call. You notice after that, 85, they didn't have league umpires anymore.
Right.
I got that straightened out. but in the meantime, it was history. Of course, Gussie, when I came there, he just wanted to get back to the World Series one more time. He was 87. And we won the World Series. I'm accepting the trophy from Bob Costas and the Boy Kuhn. And Gussie says, "We're pretty young. We ought to win again next year." I said, "I thought you only wanted to win one more time." But that changes,
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I had such a good relationship with Gussie, and I never had to worry. All I had to do was make sure if I made a trade that I'd tell him before it got to the press. That's all. I could do anything I wanted. Never question. Of course, it's just amazing. And then when I look back, and we had a year in 1977, nobody figured we were going to win. We finished 26 games behind the Met in 86 when Clark got hurt in May, didn't play the rest of the year. And Dick Young come to me, "How you going to make up them 26 games? I've already made them up. We're even." And we win. We win by 3.5. We led the league after 108 games. We were leading, not the league, all of baseball with runs scored, with no power. After 108 games, Detroit was second with the DH. That's how Tommy Herr drove in 108 runs when I moved him into Hernandez slot with 10 homers. 108 RBIs. And I think Clark got hurt, and I guess I was having breakfast with Jim Cott. Clark acted like Ty Cobb at Montreal on Labor Day and hurt himself. He was gone. I said, "Jim, what are you going to do with Cedeno?" Jim Cott and I were teammates in 1956 at Washington. And I'm having breakfast with him in the hotel. And he said, "Well, we had our meetings last year. We're going to release him at the end of the year." I said, "Would you call your general manager and tell him I'm interested in getting Cedeno, and I'll assume his salary for the year." He was making big bucks. It was only a month left. We got Cedeno for $100. He comes, plays every game the rest of the year, and drives in 27 runs in 31 games, and we win by 3.5. But, boy, that was a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, I turned the general manager's job over to my assistant on 82 opening day. And I figured then I'll never need an agent because I flew out to Arizona. Gussie had a winter home in Florida and a winter home in Arizona. He was raising horses in Arizona. He wanted me to come out. He tore up my contract. But he never remembered what I did. When I went out to Grant's Farm one day, when I seen Sussman was in New York talking to people, and I was sitting having dinner at the Mansion House with Mary Lou. And I said, Mary Lou, if he signs some of these guys to be the GM, I'm going to be fired by June. And I said, what would you say if I'd go out and tell Gussie I'll take both jobs? And she said, well, why don't you go out and talk to him? So I went out to Grant's Farm, and I said, Gussie, I got a deal for you. I will do both jobs and not charge you any more money. But when I get everything in place, I can take the job I want. I can either be the general manager or the manager and so forth. But I get the choice. Right, he said. Excuse my language. But anyway, that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. He signed me to a new 3-year contract with a $75,000 raise for take to one job instead of two. But he never forgot that I did that job for him for 2 years and never charged him a nickel more. When I would go out to Grant's farm, he would not let me talk baseball with him until the Bury people were not there. That went on for 10 years. I was kind of in the middle. What the hell was I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And he'd say, don't tell them nothing. When they leave, you and I will talk. Well, they'd leave at 1:30. He'd have a 16-ounce, what is it called? Oh, not vodka, the other one. Gin on the rocks. Bullets, he called it. Have a bullet. Oh, gee. 2 of them bullets, I'd be flying, boy. Have another one. I said, Gussie, I got to go to Belleville, speak at a banquet tonight. I can't have another one. I got to go down to the mansion house. I got to shower. I got to get dressed. I got to drive over to Belleville. And I said, that's it. Boy, he was happy, and he knew I was honest with him.
Yeah.
And I never, ever, I remember when I was first come here about a month, and they had a directors meeting. All the directors from Anheuser-Busch throughout the world came here for a meeting. And Sussman and Margaret wanted to write a speech for me. And I refused. I said, no. If they want to grill me, they want to ask me anything, I want to answer all the questions as honest as I can off the cuff, just like that. No, you better have I'm not taking any notes from Mr. Sussman or from you, Margaret. I'm going to go there and I'm going to answer August the 4th's questions. And I told him, I answered everything just like I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. And when I got done, he got up and he said, young man, he said, I think you know what you're talking about. Once he said that, I was in. But in the meantime, just think about this. Did that Suter get away because he wouldn't give a partial no trade? Bruce Suter came to me in '84 and it would sign for $7,500,000, 2.5 a year, if I would give him 10 of the 24 clubs no trade and let me pick the 10 clubs. Well, I can pick 10 clubs that don't want him, don't need him, or can't afford him. It ain't going to cost us. I can still trade him if I want to, but he wouldn't do it. So he's gone. Then Clark comes here. We win 2 pennants in 3 years. Clark wants $2 million a year. Maxie negotiates the contract. I told Clark the last day of the season, if you have trouble, call me. I'll take you out to Grant's farm and get you signed. He didn't do it. He got mad because in negotiations, Maxie told him it was a one-position ball player, and that made him mad, and he went to the Yankees. There's 2 gone. They didn't re-sign Porter. I managed Porter 8 years. I won 6 division titles, 3 pennants, 2 pennants. He wasn't there in '77. 2 pennants, but 6 division titles. But in the meantime, we set 4 attendance records in Kansas City and 7 attendance records in here. 11 times my team broke their attendance record. No other manager, and I'm not blowing smoke because they just start coming back to see the Cardinals play, but 11 times we broke the attendance record. And no one other manager in history has done it 7 times. So I felt pretty good about that. And I enjoyed my time here so much, Kyle. And even today, I'm 91. I go to the bank, the gas station, the grocery store. People come up to me and want to shake my hand and thank me for 10 years of exciting baseball. you know. Well, 10 singles, we could entertain people. Man, we could play, you know. But if we didn't get 10 singles, we were pretty dull because in the 85 World Series, the Kansas City starting pitching just shut us down. And we only scored 11 runs. And we could have won in 6 games if we hadn't been for Denker's call. In the meantime, we ended up losing, and then, of course, we had to play in the Homer Dome. And that's the greatest home field advantage I've ever seen a team have. You couldn't see, you couldn't hear. They put the blowers on when they hit where the wind was blowing out. And when we played them 3 games here, how we just stuck the bat up their rears. You know, we beat them easy. But we could have played there till Easter and never won the game. Yeah. But that's part of managing. We took them to the 7th game. And then the Bury, somebody from the Bury said at the dinner that night over here by the arch, I hope we do better next year. And I said, well, we only got to win 1 more game. You know, that's how much gratitude they had. It wasn't the fact that we were picked to finish last. I was the first guy supposed to be fired after we lost Suter and didn't replace him. We never pissed the game away. From the 2 weeks of the season. I had the guy I got from the Mets for Hernandez. Oh, that was the other guy I had to get rid of, Hernandez. And I had to send him to the Mets because I had to get rid of him by Saturday. Nobody else would bid on him. And I had to send him to the Mets. And I really get along good with Keith, but he knew that I protected him. I kept my mouth shut, and that was it. I looked like the dumbest guy in the world. And it was stupid. But that's 3 ball players we got rid of and got nothing for. And then I opened up the season. I had that kid. It was a Mets closer. The hell was his name? And the first day, he threw up a home run in the 9th inning to Carter. We lost that. The next day, he balked in the winning run. And we come home, and he walked in the winning run in the 15th inning. And we got home. So I said, I seen enough of that. So I made the chance when I went to the committee. And I just called my players in. I said, we have no closer. But we're going to get 40 saves out of the bullpen. I don't give a damn who gets them. Don't feel bad if you don't get them. If I take 1 away with 2 outs in the ninth, we're going to get them. We never lost the game from the 10th game of the season after we had a lead in the 7th inning till the 6th game of the World Series. That's how good they pitched. Lottie had 19 saves. He led. And the other guys all had 10 or 11. But, geez, Lottie, he'd come in, now listen to this, I got him for Terry. And I said, hyper, you talk about a hyper guy. Holy moly, you saw. I told him he's going to start. I come to the clubhouse at 2 o'clock. There's Lottie going to start that night, throwing the ball against the wall. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, man, he's firing the goddamn ball against the brick. I said, Jeff, what are you doing? Oh, he said, I'm wearing down a little bit. He said, I get nervous when I said, okay. And so I'm in the dugout talking to the players right before the game. Half hour before the game, there comes Jeff. Out of the clubhouse, goes down. I said, where are you going? I'm going down to warm up. I said, you got 40 minutes. Oh, he said, I want to get a little loose first. He said, I said, well, don't throw it out all the way. Within 3 pitches, I can hear the catcher's glove pounding. I called down there. I said, Rick, what is he doing? Oh, he says, that's Lottie. So he comes out to start the game, and he ain't got nothing. So I meet him when I go out. I said, well, Jeff, I just want to tell you, that's the last game you're ever going to start for me. Because you just became a relief pitcher. And that was, he got 19 saves.
Yeah.
And 18 times I brought him in. He got the first hitter out 17 times. That's big. That's the biggest what people don't realize. The first guy out of the bullpen to get that first hitter out. But we had some guys, and it was just amazing how, we'd have had, if Hernandez had 19 stolen bases in 82 on August 1st and never steal another one, and we'd have had 7 guys in the lineup with over 20 stolen bases, which had never happened in baseball.
Which in today's game, teams don't have 20 all year.
In 85, we had 314 stolen bases.
That's crazy.
And we're only throwing out 69 times. But for the 10 years I was here, we averaged 270 stolen bases a year and only got thrown out about 64 times a year. But, we had a game. To tell you, Coleman was the dangest base runner ever seen. He was not a good hitter. He was not as good offensively as Lonnie Smith. Lonnie Smith was tough, breaking up the double plays. And, I made him wear a helmet in the outfield. But he hustled and so forth. But in the meantime, he was really a good offensive player. And he'd take them second baseman and shortstops out. But Coleman, Lou Brock stole 119 bases and only stole third twice. Mm-hmm. Coleman, when he stole 109 4 years in a row, one year he stole third base 27 out of 30. I said, Vince, how do you do that? He said, Whitey, I can steal third base on a left-hand pitcher anytime I want. That's what he told me. And he could. Damnedest thing, and Lou never stole third. If Lou could have done what Coleman done, or if Coleman could have hit like Lou Brock, they'd have set some records. But here's the deal. We worked on getting the jump off the third. We got so good at it, even in Kansas City. That's in spring training. Every time we run the bases, we stayed at third and got a walking lead, learned how to hit that right foot. Gene Mock was managing Minnesota, and he and I didn't have a good relationship, but baseball relationship. He came to me one day. He said, I've been watching your teams, and he said, how comes your teams get from third to home faster than everybody else? I said, we work at it, just like that. That's all I told him. But we could do it. Mm-hmm. And if an infielder was playing in, we always had the contact play on because we got so good. If he had to go one step to his left, he could not get him at home if you got the right jump. And the other thing that people don't realize, if we did it with one out and we were out at home, we stole second anyway.
Yeah, right.
We didn't have a bunch of clunkers that now we're on first and 2 outs. So we did it every time.
Yeah.
We played different. Nobody knew that we were playing different.
Yeah. So, Whitey, the question you probably get the most is the 85 World Series.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Deckinger and the 85 call?
Well, I know Deckinger from the American League, and he was a better than average umpire, a nice guy. I don't think he ever kicked me out of a game in the 6 years I was at Kansas City. But in the meantime, in those days, you couldn't hide a bad umpire. And I think we were getting into a situation. It was almost like our federal politics. We were bipartisan. And I think that we were seeing it more and more in the World Series, and now they were starting longer playoffs and interleague play. And I told Uberoth, who was after the Deckinger call, I said, you better have major league umpires because they're only human. We won the first 2 games. I said, I hope you get the game 3 out where Hagen can shut us out. I said, Pete Uberoth was. I said, Saberhagen's a good pitcher, but his strike zone was this by this, and Joaquin's was 6 by 6. I want you to watch. I didn't say nothing publicly, but they took that game from us. Barnett was behind the plate, American League umpire. Dankinger, first base, American League umpire. I mean, so anyway, we should have won. That we didn't. And then, and Dankinger did come here for one of my dinners and did a nice job. And the year that I got in the Hall of Fame, he said, "Man," he said, "am I glad Whitey got in because people said I kept him from getting in."
Mm-hmm.
But your life changes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's. I've been probably so fortunate in my life, my family and the grandkids, and quit getting out of baseball as a manager when I did. I'd probably be dead, because. I was eating sandwiches and drinking a couple of Budweisers at 11 o'clock every night. Then I'd go home, Mary Lou would have me a sandwich sitting there. And all of a sudden, I had managed here 10 years and 18 opening days. And things start bothering me a little bit, like getting in at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Whitey, tell me about your relationship with Jack Buck.
Well, Jack Buck, he took losses harder than I did. He was the most giving man. He was so good to people, dropping $100 bills to ushers, just so good to people. And just a great guy. But Jack Buck, he was not only a great announcer, he was just what would you say? He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was a great patriot. Man, he loved the United States and the night of 9/11, that poem that he wrote and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But God almighty, I can't say enough good things about it. What a great person he was. And he came to my 70th birthday party at Borderline South, and then he went down to march in the parade on Armistice Day. It was November 11th, but my birthday was being celebrated because it was Saturday. My birthday's the 9th. But that's the last public appearance he ever made. And yet he was honored at the Missouri Athletic Club as Man of the Year that year. And he had Parkinson's. And he had a knock at the door. He was watching TV. "Come on in." He lets a guy in. It's a Jehovah Witness. And he said, "Well, come on in, sonny." He said, "I bet you haven't been told to come inside too often." He makes a deal out of it.
Yeah.
No. He said, "Mr. Buck," he said, "would you like to get closer to God?" And he said, "Well, look at me." He said, "From the looks, I look." And he had Parkinson's. He said, "Don't you think I'm close enough already?" That's the last. He told that joke in Missouri Athletic Club. He said, "Don't you think I'm close enough?" Jesus. Well, he was a good guy.
Well, I want to respect your time here, and I hope the listeners understand when I say how good of a storyteller you are, and how just anytime I have the opportunity just to sit down and hear, and I might hear the same story over and over, but just the way you tell it and being around it is such a privilege and an honor to know you, and what you've done for the Cardinals, and you are a legend in the Cardinals and will be a legend for such a long time. The last thing before I let you go, the one thing that amazes me most is when your former players are around you. They love you. It is a different. I've seen other managers and their players interact, but there is a different and a lot of that. Can you just talk to that? And then a lot of your players stayed in St. Louis and lived and raised their families here, and all of them say that was a credit to you. Can you just talk about your relationship with all of your players, not just one, but all of your players as a whole, and why that was important?
Well, I think, Kyle, because I was a Scrabini. I was never, ever good enough to play 150 games. I was a platoon player at best. I had some decent years. I had one year in 61. I had 4 pinch homers. The American League record was 5. Gary Geiger reached over in the bullpen and caught the ball that I hit off of Radix and got. I missed tying the record, But I think the one thing that I did all my life was I treated everybody alike, and I made sure I talked individually every day to every player, whether it was Tito Landrum, Jack Clark, Ozzie Smith, or Mike Ramsey. And I tried to make him feel important and maybe tell him 2 weeks before spring training, look, you two guys, Landrum, Ramsey, I remember one day they were standing running to sprints. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. If you two guys want to pay for your apartments in St. Louis, go ahead and send it. You're both on the team. I just want you to know I don't say much about you to the press, but I want you to know you're very important to this ball club. Do you know Ozzie got hurt in 82? We had 6 doubleheaders in 7 days, and Ramsey played every inning and then never made an error. Ramsey.
And so it was important for you to make sure that those role guys knew they were valuable. So when a time like that came, they were able to step in.
That's right. They did a job, and everybody, I had 2 left-handed professional pinch hitters in Brownie and Arge. And the one guy in 82, my right-handed pinch hitter, that's why I had to carry Brummer to get him his pension, of course. But the big thing was so I could pinch hit tennis.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's where, when you got 26-man limit, why don't you carry 3 catchers? So you can pinch hit the second guy. You don't have to worry. You curtail what you can do. And now with the 3-pitch rule out of the bullpen, and what about this year? 2 throws to first base.
Right.
Oh.
All right, one last question. You grew up here not far from St. Louis.
Right.
Did you go to Sportsman's Park? Did you watch games?
I used to hitchhike. I lived in New Athens, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good principal. I'd tell him I was going to skip school and go see the Browns or see the Cardinals. I'd hitchhike. The first coal truck would pick me up and take me to Belleville. I'd walk to the bus station for a dime. I'd take the Edgemont bus to St. Louis bus station. Then I'd go out across the street to the Page and get a streetcar out to the Fox. And then I'd get a transfer and go out to Sportsman's Park. It cost me $1.25 for a general admission ticket, but I was a member of the Knothole gang, and I got in for 55 cents. But during the weekdays, which I would always skip school, I would go in the upper deck. They would have the upper deck, both the Browns and the Cardinals, taped off with rope. They didn't sell tickets up there, but I would sneak up there. And I'd stand in one of them X's and watch the foul balls, and I'd get me 6 balls. 3 I'd put in my pocket. 3 I'd sell to the soldiers from Scott Air Force Base for $1 apiece. So now I've spent 75 cents to get in. I could get a hot dog for a dime, and I could get a Coke for a dime and a hot dog for 15 cents. So I spent 90 cents. Okay, I've still got $2.10 in my pocket, 3 balls in my pocket, and the best thing was I'd take the bus over to Belleville, I'd hitchhike home. The principal would never tell my mom I skipped school. And listen to this one. Listen to this. This is the best one. Not only did he not tell her, the next morning when he knew that I had study hall, there'd be, Mr. Herzog, you're wanted up in the principal's office. Everybody thought I was going up there to get my chewed out. I'd walk in the office, he'd say, How'd Newhouser look yesterday? He'd be asking me about the game. Johnny Vogler, I'll never forget him. Boy, he was good to me. He never, ever told me. I used to skip school maybe 5 times in the spring. If we didn't have a ball game on Tuesday and Fridays we played, I'd go on Wednesday. And I'd say, Mr. Vogler, I'm going to go see Newhouser pitch tomorrow. Okay.
Well, there you have it. That is Whitey Herzog, one of the best storytellers in baseball, and also probably one of the smartest baseball minds in all of baseball as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you have not listened to any of our podcasts from last year, make sure you subscribe to the Chatters Box, and it is available on all platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, and also on the Cardinals YouTube channel. You can listen or watch all of the podcasts that we did last year. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you guys next month.